So today we're going to be talking about the magic move. Now the magic move fits in brilliantly with our recent discussion on release. And I think this is like the big thing. So there are key things in the golf swing, obviously things like posture and getting the basics of alignment right and then getting yourself into a decent backswing position. But once you get those under control and into a decent enough or a suffice position, then it's all about the downswing and the sequence. And obviously that's the key thing that separates great golfers, good golfers, bad golfers, inconsistent golfers, and even down to beginner golfers. And you can see that when you walk down the range on somebody who's very new to the game, you can see that they don't understand that sequence. And that's something that needs to be learnt through experience or through education. Now, the Harvey Pennick's magic move was all about the sort of initiation to the downswing, and something that obviously he noticed great golfers do. And that's what I want to talk about today. So what I also want to do in today's video is just talk about precisely how I think it should potentially be feeling as well to each golfer. I try not to talk too much about feelings because I think that they're going to be different for different golfers. But what I do feel is that there's a strong correlation with students that I teach when it comes to what the downswing feels like in the initiation. So you're trying to balance a number of things to start the downswing correctly. And the first one is very much the pivoting action, which we've recently been talking about. So if I sort of demonstrate my backswing position like so, you've got to navigate two things in the first phase, right? So between wherever you end up in your backswing position and lead arm horizontal, okay, so this position and this position, there's two things you need to achieve. The first one is that you need to re-establish the weight towards your lead side. And the second one is that you need your pelvis parallel to target. So those are the two things that you need to achieve. Okay, now if you get that wrong, which basically just means if you end up kind of bringing your arms down and your hips are still too close to target, that's going to affect that sort of release motion. Okay, and it's not going to help you direct the golf club where you want it to be going. So that's why different golf swings, backswing position, short, long, across the line, laid off, bowed, extended. There's so many varieties that we see with great golfers, but what we always see is in the transitional motion, it's extremely similar. So that's where you guys want to be focusing your attention. So I tend to think, depends on the golfer. Some golfers that I meet, to be honest with you, I'd actually say it doesn't depend on the golfer. I'd probably go as far to say now that more golfers are aware of rotation, but they're neglecting the amount of linear motion that's necessary. Okay, so you need to balance both of those perfectly, and the easy way to do this at home, admittedly, or you can try and do it down the range, but I would get the feeling for it at home, is just to understand if you were to draw a line vertically through the outside of your lead ankle, by the time you get to lead arm horizontal, you want the weight on the lead side, you want your lead hip over that lead ankle line, and depending how you move your upper body, your shoulder will be pretty close to it as well. Okay, so obviously if you're somebody who has more lower body separation and therefore you might exasperate the tilting motion, some golfers might keep it more aligned, and again that's acceptable. But that's the first thing that you want to do. You want to be feeling that progressiveness in towards that lead side whilst triggering enough rotation so by the time you get to lead arm horizontal then you're in this type of position here. Now, it's easy to sort of suggest that if you pivot correctly your hands and arms will follow suit, but in truth, you know, for some golfers, I'm sure that probably you could hang your hat on that being good advice, but I think as you know, in reality, that's not going to happen. Like, it's completely plausible that you can start your downswing, get the lower body correct, but you leave your arms behind you a little bit too much. So I would suggest that you need to put more emphasis on the core movement between the top of the backswing and the start of the downswing, and that's the feel. Okay, so you'd argue on a general basis, more golfers don't have to think about their hands and arms in the initiation to the downswing. But what I am saying is that the one thing you'd probably have to do, which is lending yourself to this arm now, is as you start to get that feeling of moving towards that lead side and triggering rotation, you need to make sure that that sort of trail arm is coming down towards the side of the body. And the reason why is it helps you keep the club on plane. So this is a really key thing as I'm here in this like position. Now, I think this video was all about explained. And I think in an explanation video, yes, we've talked a little bit about the feeling, and what I'm saying is I need you to put more emphasis on what this is doing at the start of the downswing than maybe so much about what this is doing. However, I think a really solid reference is the two things that I've explained, or the second one I'm about to. From the face-on perspective, if you're in the mirror at home or you're going to video your swing, you want to draw that line. So by the time you pause at lead arm horizontal, you have your pelvis parallel, the weight on the lead side, the lead hip over towards that ankle line by lead arm horizontal. That means you're in a good transitional position. Brilliant, well done. From the side-on perspective, what you want to be doing when you video your swing is you want to make sure when you're doing this, you know that if you're coming down correctly, because the club shaft should travel through the shoulder plane. Okay, like so. Now, if your trail arm doesn't function correctly and it starts getting stuck, then the club shaft will start coming down too vertically at this stage, instead of it working through the shoulder line, through the elbow plane, and then in towards your hand path. So I would certainly be now suggesting that for those of you that are unfamiliar with your body parts and how you should be moving, I'd definitely be watching the last 3-4 videos that I put onto the channel, because they should really fit very, very nicely together. And I think today's video is just key, because again, it just sort of brings back into that level of importance of what that magic motion is, why tour pros all look like they do the same thing, and how you guys can go about practicing that. Don't neglect the face-on perspective, because if you start going too much this way or potentially too much this way, the upper body won't react. And that's what I'm trying to say. This bit is really, really key. And then once you feel like you've started to feel that, then you can start getting more of a sense of how your arms are coming down in towards this initiation, like so. Now, as you continue to do this, what we'll be talking about going in towards after the little Christmas break is we're really going to be talking a lot about speed, athleticism, and less about, maybe not so much less about thought, but definitely more like how do you really whip that club through and get a little bit more speed and a bit more practical when you're down the range. But the magic move is all about understanding that initiation between the top of the backswing and by lead arm horizontal, and those are the things that you're looking to achieve. Get that club shaft coming through that shoulder plane as you initiate that movement, and you're going to get yourself into a really, really good looking position. I'll catch up with you guys again really soon.